to elaborate slightly on this. With the City of Rockingham, they were surprised that it would be considered as rural, that it would not be considered and applied as an industrial zoning. Does the council consult with other councils in which this proponent operates, is my question.
I'll pass it on to the Director of Development Services.
Through the Chair, the City has classified the land use based on the information provided to it as part of the development application. The zoning for this property is rural composite. So it's not a straight rural zoning, it's a rural composite zoning. And additional uses, as proposed through this development application, can be considered under the City's local planning scheme.
Can I just get clarification on that, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry, we'll have to call it a day at that point. But thank you for your questions. Okay, are there any questions from any other members of the public or councillors before we move on to the next item? Councillor Stellard?
Yes, thank you, through the Chair. I've been watching intently and listening to this process. I too have heard the comment said to me, but I can't remember exactly where, that there was a request, or there would be a request, and I think the Director can put that to bed quite easily with a few comments, that there may be some grinding or crushing going on site. And as far as I understand, that's unacceptable. That's not within the scheme. What can we do if that sort of thing was attempted? Where would we sit as a council? How do we deal with that?
Through the Chair,
sorry, can I also say to Mr. Mazza that was said in here 100 cars per day going into the centre, not 10. Thank you. Sorry.
Through the Chair, as stated, the City is obligated to assess and provide recommendations to Council based on the information provided to it. Should other operations outside of the development approval occur on the site, they will be subject to separate compliance processes.
Do you have a follow-up question, Councillor Stillard?
Sorry, yes. We can take action to comply, or whatever we wish, the direction for them.
Through the Chair, the City would gather evidence and gauge a response accordingly.
Okay, Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I recognise that the report mentions, includes an email from Main Roads that the traffic island outside the applicant's property would remain, and that the gap would remain. But as far as I'm aware, that's the extent of the consideration of the grade separation that's happening just down the road. Is there any more information that I haven't actually been able to find? Because if that's the extent of it, I'm pretty uncomfortable with how much information is available about how the grade separation is going to interact with this property. So I guess my question is to the Director: is there more information from Main Roads about how the two things will work?
I'll refer that to Director of Assets, please.
Thank you. Through the Chair, the project for the Tonkin Interchange project, the project zone actually ceases, Main Roads project zone ceases at least 120, 150 metres west of this median break. So from the Tonkin Interchange point of view, it's outside the zone of the project zone.
And very final question from me. I understand that the traffic impact study was done on the design that they were asked to comment on. Is there a comment from staff about the relocation of the major entry and exit crossover, and whether that would be a more suitable, or that would be a suitable outcome to alleviate some of the concerns of residents and council?
Through the Chair, one of the short answers are no, but one of the main observations would be getting a necessary deceleration lane for the left-hand turn movement heading east. If it was relocated to the existing crossover, the impacts would be more significant. and possibly not attainable. That was and that's where I think you'll find that the traffic engineers from the applicant spoke to that earlier this evening.
Okay, so this is the last opportunity to ask questions, and I can see that there is another member of the public who wishes to ask a question. If you can come forward and state your name and location.
Gail Evans, a Swan Animal Haven, 714 Welshpool Road, Wattle Grove. I attended this meeting and I didn't have any questions prepared, but listening to the Millers and their driveway is one side of this proposed garden centre. We are the animal centre on the other side of the proposed garden centre. If 2 deliveries happen at the same time and we get a bus, we won't be able to get into our driveway. Does the council have any idea of if these deliveries happen like this, what will happen to us with 80-kilometre traffic coming along behind us, with a few dogs in people's cars turning into our property? Carnage is probably the word I would think.
Director of Asset Services, you'd like to comment on that?
I think, thank you through the chair, the traffic impact assessment statement talks about expected increase in vehicle movements, and I'd probably ask the community if they look at that. It talks about 10 vehicle movements turning left into the property in the peak hour. 10 in a peak hour. That's the busiest they expect that to occur.
But I go back to my question. What if there's 2
Sorry,
deliveries?
no, you've asked your question, and when we're not in debate, it's been
I
answered.
don't feel I got an answer, I'm sorry.
So your question seemed to be more of a statement of, you answered the question, you said that you felt that there would be carnage, and did you wish to expand? Have you got a further question?
No, I don't. I'm
Okay.
just confused, actually, and I hope you just take into consideration.
Yep, that's the purpose of this
my
public
question.
agenda briefing, is that we take into consideration all of the statements and questions put forward, so council can make their final determination. So thank you for that.
I hope you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I just want to be really clear. I'm going to be moving on to the next item. So if there are any further questions, whether they be from councillors or members of the public, you need to ask them now. You have a question, sir?
Patrick Miller, Wattle Grove. Just worried about the traffic. Has the traffic flow from the Arbor Tree Services been taken into consideration properly? The truck flow in and out of that service? Thank you.
I'll refer that to the Director of Asset Services.
I think I'd have to ask them, the community, to refer to the road safety audit. It's found no findings of any concern regarding the amended designs have not addressed.
Okay. So this is the last opportunity before I move on to the next item. Have all councillors and community asked all the questions? Okay. Thank you. I'm now moving on to the next item, which is 10.2.1. I believe that's a confidential item. Only the attachment. Are there going to be any questions, councillors, in relation to the attachment? Yep. We'll allow Chris to do his presentation, and if your questions relate to the confidential attachment, we'll go behind closed doors. Over to you, Chris. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors, members of the public and fellow staff members. The report I'm presenting tonight is a tender report, item 10.2.1. Purpose of this report is to award a tender for traffic management services for the city. This tender has been put together to meet the requirements of the varied nature of city works, be it for 4 hours, all day, night works, emergency works, the need for one controller, or 3 teams at 3 different locations concurrently. Our works can change quickly because of the weather, the availability of contractors or materials, deferrals in construction, and the need to require service locations. The current contract was also for 3 years, with 2 one-year extensions, expiring at the end of next month on the 31st of December 2021. The annual spend is approximately $700,000. The services proposed require preparation of traffic management plans, provide traffic controllers, vehicles, signs, variable message boards, equipment, and to have the resources and ability to implement simple and complex traffic management on site. It was important that the provider was also able to demonstrate that they could also provide a rapid after-hours service for emergencies, such as in a storm event, with trees across the road, vehicle accidents, etc. 7 tenders were received by the close of tender on the 9th of September. 4 of those tenders passed a qualitatives pass mark of 60%. The reference checks undertaken were satisfied that we are recommending a competent provider who has the capabilities and competencies to meet the city's needs. Like the last contract, it provides the city flexibility and an effective and efficient means to ensure the best use of ratepayers' money. So the recommendation is full on the screens, that Council accept the tender RFT 2102, provision of traffic management services from Carrington's WA Proprietary Limited, for the itemised prices as per the schedule of rates set out in the confidential attachment, commencing on the 1st of January 2022 for an initial 3-year contract with 2 further 1-year extensions at the sole discretion of the City of Kalamunda. So, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Manager? Yep, Councillor Connor.
I'd like to ask my questions behind closed doors later in the evening, if that's all right.
Yep. Are there any questions that aren't required to go behind closed doors? No? Okay. All right. So that being the case, we will defer item 10.2.1 to go behind closed doors after the corporate service reports and Office of the CEO reports. Do I need a mover for that? No. Okay. All right. So moving on, I've got the corporate service reports. Oh, sorry, my mistake. Sorry.
Office of CEO.
Yep, the Office of the CEO. Yep.
So, through the chair, I think Director Asset Services has got this one.
Thank you. Through the chair, I do. Thank you, councillors, members of the community, fellow staff and those watching remotely. The purpose of this report is to seek council approval for an electricity supply contract to commence at the end of this financial year, and also to determine what level of renewable energy that the city is prepared to pay for as part of this contract. By way of background, the Western Australian Local Government Association, or WOLGA, has a project on foot predominantly to work towards reducing the cost of electricity for its members and also to move towards carbon neutral. It's working from the fact that 47 member councils have now signed a climate change emergency declaration, and there were 55 councils that were interested in trying to save money in electricity. So a bulk bid was put together. There's a whole program of activities they want to undertake over ensuing years, but the first phase is a 3-year contract for contestable energy with the option for carbon footprint offsets. Okay, so contestable energy. Under the Western Australian regulations at the moment, large sites that consume more than 160 megawatt hours per year of electricity are what's called contestable. And they can go and contract for their power from anyone that's licensed in Western Australia to sell electricity. Everyone else, and everyone else at home, you're signed up with Synergy. And we have 8 contestable sites and 90 non-contestable sites. You can see we've only got a handful of very large sites in this portfolio. That costs us at the current moment, because we're under a contestable contract, costs us about $200,000 a year. And for the electricity generators in the southwest system to generate that amount of electricity incurs about 550 tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions from the generation activity. The Walga negotiated contract that we've been put to the table tonight can reduce that cost by about $24,000 a year. The options exist to then, for paying a little bit more, how much of that carbon footprint of 550 tonnes you want to take towards 0 tonnes of carbon emissions from that power. So this chart attempts, and I'll put my hand up, it's an attempt. So the orange bars you see are if we wanted to put some offsets towards carbon neutrality, what would be the cost savings we would achieve over our existing contracts. So the first two ones, our current contract's about 200. We'd save about 24,000 if no offset we took. But if we started to climb in our carbon footprint emission savings for up to up to $24,000 of expense, we can get totally zero, 550 tonnes a year avoided. And we can have anything in between. So the recommendation is that the council approve the bundled contract from 1st of July next year to 31 March 2025, and that we also recommend that we spend 100% of this consumption to come from natural power sources to offset our carbon footprint, which effectively means we save 24,000, but we spend 24,000 to achieve carbon neutrality.
Okay. Got any questions, councillors? Councillor Thomas?
Why is it July 22 to March 2025? That's a strange thing.
Thank you, councillor. It's a good question. Walga had to pick a period of a 3-year contract that covered the bases of most of the participants, because each participating council has a various expiration date of existing contracts on foot. Ours happens to expire 30 June 2022.
And that was a very good answer.
Thank you, ma'am.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, just a question on number 2. It says to come from natural power sources. If I assume that gas and coal are natural power sources, am I looking at the word renewable perhaps rather than natural?
Thank you. May I just log in and I can discuss that? Thank you. Thank you. Through the chair. The word natural power is what Walga were using in the contract offers. In terms of renewable power, what they will be saying, they'll be doing the 180 watt, well, the power would come from the 180 megawatt Warradadge wind farm and Greenough River solar farms. So they are totally renewable power sources.
Thank you for that. Could you indulge me and maybe put renewable in brackets after natural? Simply because, I'm sorry, but coal and gas are natural resources.
Thank you. Through the chair, of course I can.
Councillor Thomas?
Does this have any relationship to if we get our solar farm going?
Thank you. Through the chair. Why a 3-year contract is recommended is because we're currently out to expressions of interest from partners to operate the solar farm for us, and it's pragmatic to suggest it'll be at least March 2025 before, if we proceed, that it's actually generating electricity. So I see it as a low risk that we're doing ourselves in the eye in that regard.
Councillors, are there any other further questions? Councillor O'Connor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the Director, where would the city invest in carbon offsets? Where does it actually take place? The deletion of our carbon footprint?
That is through the source of the electricity coming from generation plants that are 100% renewable.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yep, questions from the public? Mr Forrest? Oh, yeah, if you could come up to the microphone. Oh, sorry.
Through you, Chair, surely the issue of the capital investment to produce that power, where does it actually come from?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Forrest, for your question. If I understand it, you're asking me where is Synergy getting these renewable generation plants from?
Well, what I'm inferring is we're talking about natural power, or whatever Kathy's actually mentioned before, but there is a significant amount of capital expenditure to go into constructing the devices,
Yes.
whether it's rooftop, whether it's windmills, whether
Yes.
whatever it is. Could you just explain where that capital expenditure is actually sourced? Who's paying for it?
Oh, thank you. Through the chair, yes. Synergy themselves will be doing the investment in the generation plant.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions either from councillors or the public? Okay, happy to move on to the next item. That will need to be behind closed doors. So if I could have a mover. Do I need a mover? Yep, Councillor O'Donnell's seconder. That's good. Okay.
So you need a seconder to go behind.